Let's sew a fun and easy vinyl toiletry bag. Well, welcome. I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are making this vinyl toiletry bag. So it has box corners at the bottom, it has a zipper near the top, and this is perfect for storing any of your bathroom items or makeup. Now, this is made with vinyl, and if you are a first-time user to sewing with vinyl, it can be a little tricky, so we will include steps along the way. Now, there's a full Etsy pattern available for this in my shop. When you get it, you'll see there's two pattern pieces. So you be sure to print these out, and then once you have them printed out, we can start working with it. In addition, you are going to need some vinyl. I would highly recommend a thinner vinyl. This is your first time using it. And then you'll probably want like an 11 or 12-inch zipper. You can always cut it down if needed so that you can create the full bag itself. Now, once you have all of your supplies together, when you print out the pattern pieces, be sure to check the gauge. So there's a gauge on here. You want to be sure that you're following that size so that you get the correct size bag. Now for cutting out the pattern pieces, definitely use pattern weights. So vinyl, once you stick it like with a pin, that mark's going to be there forever. It's not going to come out. So pattern weights allow you a way that you don't have to worry about ruining your vinyl. If you don't have any pattern weights on hand, you could always lay out the pattern, trace it out with like a pen, and then cut out the markings that you did. One of my biggest pieces of advice though in working with vinyl is making sure that your machine is set up correctly. So this means making sure that you have the right needle, such as a non-stick needle, making sure that you have a non-stick presser foot, making sure that the tension is set up. These are all pretty unique items for each sewing machine, so before you begin on this project, be sure that you've done some testing with your vinyl, that it's going to work with your machine, that everything looks good so that you're not actually ruining the final fabric that you do work with. Once you have this cut out though for that one piece, you're then going to repeat all of these steps for the second piece, and then we'll be able to get started. So here is what the front of our bag, the two pattern pieces, will look like when you have it cut out, and then I also have my zipper. So taking the zipper, you're going to be matching it with right sides together with the bottom piece of your vinyl, or the piece that has those two square cutouts at the bottom. And for this, I'm using quilting clips. So again, we do not want to use pins when it comes to vinyl, as it's going to puncture the vinyl and you will be able to see it when you remove the pin. Quilting clips are a way that you don't have to worry about damaging your material. So now I'm just going to take about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. For this, you want to use a presser foot. This is going to make it a lot easier to sew the zipper on, especially with the vinyl. In addition, I do a couple manual stitches, so kind of turning my wheel so that I get the needle to go down, and this just helps my machine get started, especially with sewing with that thicker vinyl. You may not need to do this, and I would highly recommend testing it out before you actually begin on working on the project if you are new to using vinyl. Once you have everything going, you're just going to take that seam though, so doing that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then once we are done with the seam, you can then look to see, make sure everything looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim off some of this extra plastic so that I'm able to do a top stitch. Now, top stitching vinyl can be a little tricky. So one, if you want to skip this step, you can. But the second is if you want to sew into the zipper itself, like that zipper tape, and not the teeth, but the zipper tape, so that you kind of get a little bit of a neater look and you can go back and redo it if you need to, that's another option. So I'm just going to go through, trim off some of this extra vinyl, so making it be about 1/8 of an inch instead. And then I'm going to flip this over, and then as you can see, I'm folding the zipper tape and the extra vinyl towards the zipper this time, and then I'm just going to take a top stitch on that black material instead of the vinyl. You can definitely do a normal top stitch. This is completely optional. I found that it worked a little better with my machine, but again, it's really up to you if you even want to do a top stitch at all. And then once you have this top stitch done, I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper teeth itself, and we'll have another view on that in a second. But this is just going to give you a really clean look, and it can make your bag look a little nicer. So here's what it looks like. As you can see, I did not sew into the zipper teeth, so I just took a really close seam to hold everything in place. So now here is what my zipper pouch currently looks like, and now it's time for us to add the second pattern piece onto the top. So with right sides together, I'm going to just be matching one of these edges, the long edges, to the zipper. For this one, there really isn't a top or bottom. Just take one of those longer edges and match it onto the right side of the zipper, and then we're just going to be taking a seam directly across, very similar to how we did before. So I'm still using my zipper foot, I'm still taking that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm just going to sew the zipper into place. Now for the zipper, if you need to adjust where the actual zipper pull is, be sure to lift up your presser foot, stopping, and then just adjust it, and then you can continue on your way. So here is what my second side of the zipper looks like. Now I'm going to repeat all of those exact same steps of trimming off any of this extra vinyl and then folding this over. So doing that nice finger pressing, and then as you can see, this is where I am taking the top stitch. So I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from the actual zipper teeth, and I'm just going to sew into that zipper tape, making it slightly easier in case I need to take it out. But overall looks good. And of course, be sure to test your zipper to make sure that it is working. If you run into any issues, you can always take that top stitch out. And since we didn't actually go into any of the seam vinyl, you can redo it. So now we need to cut out the back of our bag. So we're going to be basically using the front that we've created as a pattern piece. You're going to lay this over top of a single layer of vinyl, and then I'm just going to be cutting out this shape to get the back of the bag. So being sure that you are cutting out those 1-inch squares at the bottom, going through, making sure everything looks nice and even. So now I have two pieces, the back and the front. So what we are going to do is you're going to be opening your zipper. So I would say at least halfway, if not more. And then once you have that zipper opened, we are going to be laying the back piece of our bag over top. So with right sides together, if your vinyl is like that. And then you're just going to be using quilting clips to pin up the sides as well as the top of the bag and then the bottom. So we are going to be taking 4 seams, so 1, 2, and 3. And then on the bottom, we are also taking a seam, but you're not going to do anything with these squares just yet. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and now for this, you want to remove the zipper foot that you had in place and either use a walking foot or a roller foot or a non-stick foot. There's lots of different options for this, so this can be partly when you're testing out how the vinyl works best on your machine. And I'm just going to begin the process of sewing the seams into place. So I'm starting with one at the side edges. I get my machine sort of going with those manual stitches, and then I'm going to begin the process of actually sewing it. When you get to your zipper, be sure to use caution to not go through any metal portion that may be there. And then once you get to the corner up at the top, once you get about 1/2 inch away or so, you're going to lift up your presser foot and then pivot your fabric. So where we have our needle down in the material, I'm just going to pivot this, and then I'm going to put the presser foot back down and continue on my way sewing. So you're going to continue this for all 3 of those sides, and then once we get to our next corner, especially from the top, you want to be sure to pivot again and then go down that last and third side, being cautious of the zipper if needed. And then once you get to the bottom, you are just going to stop your seam. Now for vinyl, you don't really want to do any back stitching since that can kind of weaken it, so just be sure to knot those off at the end. And then we will be doing that last seam along the bottom, which is a separate seam itself. So this is what it will look like. You can see that I've not done anything with these squares. They are not sewn at all. And we are now going to go through and begin the process of cleaning up a little bit of the seam allowance as well as knotting all of those threads. So for this, for each of the edges, I just cut off about probably 1/4 inch of the vinyl, just to give it a little bit of a neater look. Remember, vinyl does not fray, so we don't have to worry about finishing off the edges at all. And now we're going to start on the process of those boxed edges. So for these box corners, you're going to put your finger inside of it and then just sort of push it open. So push it so that those 2 edges are coming together to form a little edge itself. And then we are going to be putting our quilting clips to hold this in place. So this is what gives our box a little bit more dimension and allows it to stand up. So once you have this done for one side, you are just going to be repeating this for the second side. As far as the seam allowance goes, for those pieces that we did for each of the edges, you can determine how you want to sew over those. I'm just going to sew directly over it, and my machine did not have too big of an issue. As you can see, I'm going to be doing about a 1/2 inch seam allowance this time, so slightly bigger just to make sure it gets through all of those layers, and then doing the exact same technique that I have been doing of just doing that straight stitch, and then being sure that we are going to be knotting those threads to make sure it's nice and secure. Once you have this done for the one box side though, you're just going to repeat it for the second corner so that we can get those nice box corners and our bag will be able to stand up on its own. Once this step is done though, we are done sewing our bag, so now it's just time for me to knot all of these threads. Super important with this vinyl. I know we've talked about it multiple times, but backstitching can sort of weaken it, so knotting the threads is the way to go. And then just trim off any of that extra vinyl if you want to have it look a little neater. Then we're just going to turn this right side out. You could definitely use a steamer to help loosen it if needed. But here is what our bag looks like. I absolutely love these little bags. If you use thicker vinyl, this can be a little bit more of a process, but thinner vinyl, it can be so easy to just whip these up. They're perfect for makeup. They can hold toiletries. A toothbrush will fit inside of them, as well as makeup brushes will fit inside of them as well. The top is around 8 inches, the bottom 6 inches, and then it stands around 6-7 inches tall. So really great size, perfect for bathroom or traveling or any sort of needs that you can imagine. These are also great gifts to make for other people. So let me know what you think of these bags. Remember, there is a full Etsy pattern available, so everything we talked about today is in a write-up description, and the pattern pieces are available in my Etsy store. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.